Let's talk more about South Africa's energy crisis and the stage 4 load shedding as announced today. We're joined by Professor Sampson Mamphweli. He is Director at the Center for Renewable and Sustainable Energy Studies at Stellenbosch University. Prof, always good to have you on. So, Eskom said today in that briefing that we will not be headed for stage 6 load shedding, at least not this week. But is it inevitable, especially with a drop in temperatures expected in the coming weeks?
Good afternoon, Thembekile and the viewers. Yes, the situation is quite dire, as Eskom put it. The Eskom really needs additional generation capacity as quickly as possible. We're heading to winter now, and with the winter coming, anything can happen, because if I can only imagine that we're having about 11,000 megawatts offline. In addition to that, we have about 5,000 megawatts that Eskom takes offline for them to do regular maintenance, which is very necessary. They can't avoid that. And in winter, we will start to have people coming online with things such as your heaters and your air conditioners. The demand for electricity will shoot up, and this kind of breakdowns that Eskom has, they are not going to help at all. So we could be heading towards a very difficult winter. I was looking at the numbers in terms of load shedding. We're sitting at about 550 gigawatt hours that we have load shedded so far from January this year. I think we're going to have a very difficult winter.
Given that context then, Prof, and the fact that with every one of these briefings is an apology and a pledge to do better by Eskom management, including the man in charge, André, Ruyter. Are the people in charge of Eskom, are they on top of the situation, or do they even know what they're doing at this point?
Yeah, it's what is concerning for me. When I looked at the Eskom financials, everything looked fine. The management was doing quite well. But what is concerning for me is the fact that we have statements coming out saying a power station tripped, and it ends there. That kind of detail does not give us. They don't give us that much detail in terms of what they mean by a power station tripped. We need a bit more information as the public to understand what could be happening in those kind of power stations. Personally, I'm starting to suspect some foul play at power station level. I speak under correction, but I think there is some kind of sabotage that's taking place. Eskom needs to really do some thorough investigation in terms of what is really happening at power station level, because some of the reasons are starting not to make sense in my view.
It also, as you said earlier, Eskom needs more capacity. There have been a number of interventions announced by the utility itself. There's been a talk from the various ministers in charge or responsible for energy provision in this country. Those all appear quite long-term. In fact, they've added nothing to the grid right at this stage. Where can Eskom look to in the immediate term to keep the lights on or minimize the risk of load shedding?
It's quite difficult for them to get additional capacity as things stand. What I can think of is, if you look at the wind and solar energy projects in the REAP program, they have additional capacity that they currently curtail, because their contracts don't allow them to feed more than what they are contracted to feed. In the past, I've learned that in the wind sector only, they could be curtailing around 300 megawatts. But that only will only try to assist to a certain extent. We have breakdowns that are taking up to 16,000 megawatts at a time. So I'm afraid there isn't much that they can do immediately to try and avoid the situation. What they need to do is to try and run the existing fleet as efficiently as they can. I heard André Ruyter talking about some wet coal. That doesn't help as well, because when you get wet coal, you feed it into the boilers. you reduce the efficiency, the conversion efficiency of the boilers. And most of these power stations are already not efficient in terms of conversion efficiency as things stand. So the situation is quite difficult as things stand. We need more generation capacity online as quickly as possible.
I'd like to revisit an old suggestion, Prof. There had been some suggestion in the last year or two or so, about how Eskom should perhaps look into saying, look, until the energy crisis has been resolved altogether, let's find a stage of load shedding that can be implemented daily so that when it does indeed happen, it's not such a massive shock, a massive disruption to the lives of South Africans and businesses as well. Is that still feasible?
Yeah, so that's not entirely feasible because the challenge is that even if you implement it on a daily basis, which is basically Eskom has got enough reserve capacity in the entire generation fleet that allows them to take offline about 5,000 megawatts for regular maintenance. That on its own is equivalent to implementing a certain stage of load shedding, but we still have enough generation capacity. So if we go that route of saying we'll have a certain load shedding on a daily basis or a weekly basis, it's not going to help because the problem is that we have breakdowns that take offline a huge chunk of energy that we need. And this happens without any warning. For instance, we could be implementing that kind of load shedding and then we lose 16,000 megawatts, which then means that we need to up it to a certain level. So that's just going to make matters worse, I'm afraid.
Well, Prof, in the interim, I suppose you and I can just buy a bunch of power banks and then make sure they're fully charged and rent them out to our neighbors. For now, thank you very much. Professor Sampson Mamphweli, Director of the Center for Renewable and Sustainable Energy at the University of Stellenbosch. Thank you for your time, sir.